Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Here's What We Know podcast, the podcast of unexpected conversations. And it's never more true than it will be on this podcast because I've known her for a long time. And as I just told her before we went on this thing, I said, listen, I've got nothing prepped because you and I have never had problems talking in our entire lives.
Yeah. The only thing that you and I don't have today are our spouses who generally exponentially add to our conversation.
Listen, my spouse tends to calm things down, and your spouse gets us to the weird zone. And it's a beautiful combination.
Oh, it is.
And you and I sometimes are trying to have a discussion amongst adults, and my wife Heather is always trying to go, what did you just say, Sean?
Wait.
This is Stephanie Flood from A Flood of Love. And listen, we've been doing stuff with that, but I've been talking to her, and I finally just said, hey, we have never really gone deep and talked about all the things, right? And we've done what we call reels and stuff. And we've done the little things where you talk about 60 seconds. We've even done a live stream. But even on the live stream, 10 minutes got up and I'm like, I didn't even cover that much of what we talk about when we're just sitting around in the backyard or a restaurant, right? Because we'll go on for hours.
Which we did the last time we hung out.
And it was awesome. We had a great time, and then my kids, because, they were in there playing their video games. And when you guys left and stuff, they're like, man, you guys had a lot of fun, didn't you? We always do.
Yes.
We always do. Well, now, here's the thing. You're a therapist, and try to tell people exactly what you do, because I don't know if I've ever covered everything.
Okay. So you want the long version or you want the condensed?
I want the long version. This is a podcast.
Okay. Long version is this. So I have a bachelor's degree in theater arts. And I have a bachelor's degree in theater arts because I had generally no guidance whatsoever. And my best friend Sabrina at the time was like, we should go to San Jose State. And I said, yeah. And she's like, we should join a sorority so we'll have a place to live. And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. And then she was like, we should be theater arts majors. And I was like, yeah. And then I was dating Sean at the time, and he's like, that's super cute. You're going to need like a real degree. It'll be fine. Don't worry. He may have been right. So fast forward, it took me a little while to get a real degree. So I ended up, when I was 30, getting a master's degree in counseling psychology. And so it was a 2-year program at University of San Francisco, and it just seemed the right path for me. And a lot of people don't actually know that both my parents are therapists. So I don't know why it didn't occur to me earlier that I might possibly be good at this, or this was a good career path, but and so I started my private practice after you have to do a bazillion intern hours. So I had to work at all of the really fun places in San Jose, mostly a lot of group homes. And I very quickly found out that I do not want to work with adolescents, although I have 4 of them on my own. They are not my population of preference. I generally like adults. So fast forward, I end up with a private practice. It was always the plan to have a private practice. I did not want to go to an agency or do any of that kind of work. I just wanted to build my own business. I wanted my own hours, set my own fees, all that kind of stuff. And Los Gatos Sex Therapy is actually the name of my therapy business in Los Gatos. And it was born out of the idea at the time that there were not a lot of people talking about sex and intimacy, like, at all in therapy. It's a subject that most therapists are just like, I don't want to touch that. No.
And you get it. I mean, you understand it, especially after dealing with everything you've done with the interns and stuff, and you saw some of the very interesting to scary cases.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, you get it, you understand that, but it was so amazing that you took a look at that and said, no, there's a lane there. There's a lane for adults who are trying to have something that's not juvenile or just nothing based in reality.
Right. I also tell people all the time, like, you do become a therapist because stuff wasn't normal growing up. So this is not like this is my parents are married still. But I had to sign a purity pledge. And when I was 15, and I had to place it on the White House lawn for Bill Clinton. Now, this has got to be one of the most confusing messages ever.
A purity pledge for Bill Clinton.
That's just there's no words to describe. To this day, some of my thought process around, and bless my parents, they're very religious. They had good intentions for this process. I was not the only one. There was thousands of kids that did this. I don't know why. This is like a thing.
Well, and the time we didn't know Bill Clinton was Bill Clinton.
I believe it was right. Like, it might have been the summer before. It was bad.
Might have been the summer before we found out that he was not who we thought he was.
He probably was not the appropriate person to be pledging ourselves to. Anyway, especially as a young woman. And so, that's my thought process on my therapy and working with couples is, my guess is a lot of us got some really strange messaging growing up about sex and intimacy. And that's probably something that most people don't really feel comfortable talking about. And once we get into a relationship with somebody, we're just supposed to know, like, what to do, how they're supposed to feel. And talking about it usually leads to one of two things. Either we are definitely not talking about it ever, or we're going to have a huge fight over it all the time. The same fight usually. And so that's how the business got built, and it went crazy. Like, it has never not been a full practice for. Sean will tell you I only work part-time, but that's says the man working from a bar right now.
Yeah. That's a whole story, y'all. That's a whole story. He can work from a bar. Yeah.
We can have Sean come on, and he will be second level to this podcast.
If Sean comes on, you know what Sean and I end up doing? We end up talking about space, and then that takes us into weird places, which would be a great podcast. And I should make that happen, because I'll just sit back and go, all right, strap in. I have no idea where this is going, but it's going to go somewhere.
Yeah. So and then moving from like normal therapy sessions, like, come to my office, we sit down, we go through all the things, try and give you some feedback, advice, try different suggestions of things to do, pretty standard kind of couples therapy stuff. And then A Flood of Love was actually born out of the idea of wanting to help more people. So there's only so many people that you can sit in an office with day after day after day. And that's actually where Flood of Love came from, is to build an online course so that it could be accessible to really anybody at any time.
I think it's brilliant, because I'm going to go into the weeds with you, because that's where I like to go, because as much fun as we have and as funny as she is, if you're not paying attention, she's brilliant. And I don't mean that as she's kind of smart. I mean, she's brilliant, and she hides it by making you laugh. But if you listen, yeah. And trust me, I walked away from every conversation going, wow, I did not expect it. I was not thinking that way. And you opened my eyes to a new way of looking. And that's why I always enjoy my conversations with you. I always wanted to ask you, how long, and I don't know if how long or maybe why, I don't know, but when do couples stop talking about their needs? right?
What a
When
great
does that
question.
happen? And because we do, we start just trying to take care of what we're doing, or just trying to keep her or him from being angry.
Yeah. Um, Most of us are conflict adverse, myself included, considering even though that I like listen to people fight all day long. I actually do not enjoy it myself.
Can I also throw in the caveat that your husband and you have been dating since high school, I
That
believe?
is correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So just so you know.
Yeah.
And
Just
they have 4 children, teenagers, except
yes.
they have almost all but one.
What the baby?
The
She's not really a baby, but she will forever be the baby. Yeah. No. So first and foremost, Sean and I have been together since we were 15. So that makes us at 30 years now. 30 years. We've been married for 22. We had 4 kids in 5 years because we didn't know how that worked. Actually, I'll tell people all the time, like, Sean just really liked making them, and I very much enjoyed having them. And so it was like a perfect combination till that last one. And then he was like, dude, you got like 4 kids. I don't know. Seems like it's going well.
You guys are that magical combination. I mean, all he has to do is look at you and you smile and there's a baby. I mean, I mean, that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, it was. So to your question, when do people stop like expressing their needs? This is this is gonna hurt some souls. I'm pretty sure that what happens is we have that first 6 months of infatuation. And typically, if you're attracted to somebody, it's just going to magically flow for the most part. Most everybody that gets together has that level of chemistry for the most part. And it's things are good and we're clicking and we're vibing and we're all the things that we think that we are bonded and we know everything about our partner and it is delightful and we don't ever have to worry about anything because they are the one. Yay! And then the chemicals wear off. And when the chemicals wear off, that's typically where we will start to get into conflict with our partner. Now, most people who have been together long term actually kind of move through that phase and then move into long term attachment. Um, and so, what tends to happen is because we want to stay bonded and attached to our partner, we will not necessarily speak about the things that are a problem. Like, we'll just kind of keep it, you know what? It's fine if we're not having sex on a regular basis. I don't want to bother them. We don't really need to be doing that like we used to because we're, moms and dads and we're busy and we're, this or that or whatever it is. Or, oh, he doesn't really like do things that I would really enjoy in the bedroom, but it don't hurt his feelings. So it's better not to have conflicts. We're just not going to say anything. That is typically what happens. Most everybody that has been together for a really long time actually really and truly loves their partner. And they don't really want to create conflict until it just builds up, builds up, builds up, builds up. And I tell people all the time, well, you ended up in my office because your house is on fire.
Wow.
So,
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Is there a do is there a typical complaint? And I use that word simply because I can't come up with another. Is there a typical concern that is uniquely male and uniquely female, or is it all over the board that it can go both ways? Are males saying there's not enough sex or intimacy? Are females saying there's not enough emotional bonding, or there's too much, or I'm tired of not being able to like go to bed and just go to bed? I don't know. I'm just looking at all the stereotypes and going, is there a typical, or is it all over the map?
I would say, yeah, the ones that you just touched on are pretty darn typical. For men, very often, it's a mismatched desire thing. And I talk about men like you all get some testosterone by the time you're 12, 13 years old, and you ride that lovely wave without too much to dip on the radar there until you're in your 60s. And then it like dips down. Ladies, on the other hand, we do not have that same lovely hormonal like shelf. We get to ride the roller coaster of hormones. And so trying to navigate us and where we might be on that, I think is where a lot of couples end up with this like mismatched kind of desire level. I think then, and this is very much simplifying it for men, but I like sex. I want to have sex. When I have sex, I'm nicer to her. And then I like her more. The women do the exact opposite. If he's nice to me and he's attuning to me, then I could think about having sex with him. And then, oh yeah, we did. Oh, that's really nice. The end. Just like start all over again. And so most men don't totally get that like that way of thinking. Like women are like going like this, and men are like,
well, men think it's a continuation, right? If we did one, then we should be ready to go the next time, right? And so, like, if I come back to you tomorrow night, because I'm just trying to extrapolate from what you're saying, where women, it is a day-to-day event, and you have to, it's. And I don't mean this as an insult. I'm not trying to say this, but if you've ever trained a dog, it takes many days and you never know. And then if you don't do the trick with them after a while and then just bring the trick up after weeks or months, they're not going to know the trick. Is it anything like that, or have I just signed my own fate right there?
Well, I'm guessing there are a few ladies that might give you some comments, but it's fine.
And I don't know. Listen, I ask these questions knowing, ladies, that I do not know. And I say that as somebody who has a wife and who has 4 sisters. I do not know. I do not know. And I would never assume to know. That's why I've always enjoyed, you can tell how our conversations go. And when I told you earlier that I always walk away going, I've never thought of it that way. That's what Stephanie does. That's what I always love about these conversations. This is for my learning. If you guys be able to catch something up, good for you.
I would say yes. That is a bit true. Men generally think, "Oh, I did something nice for her 4 days ago." The end.
And it's the effort.
Yes, it's the effort, and and I also talk to couples too that you both have to do your part. Like she cannot just ask you to continually emotionally meet her needs over and over, day after day, and then give nothing back. And typically for most men, the giving back is some kind of physical affection. That is very typically how men feel loved. Like, so, now I am very much of the thought process that does not necessarily mean skin to skin contact. I'm keeping this as PG as possible. There can be all kinds of things that create intimacy if you don't want to do the actual thing.
And see, that's where I think is key. And I think it works with the dog training thing, because what my point was, unless you're willing to train the dog and reward the dog every day, right? The dog's going to forget. You can't just go, oh, I trained you to do one thing. No, you have to do it every day, and you have to reward them. You have to give them love, and you have to do all of that stuff to get the dog to respond. So I think I was kind of halfway on that.
You were,
because it's a two-way street is my point, right? I mean, if you're not willing to go through, then why would who you're trying to get you to, they don't understand. It's the whole process. And that's the fascinating thing to me, is the word intimacy, because I think that's the key. I don't think sex is the key. Sex is, and again, you've known me well enough to know that if I'm wrong, you tell me. I have no problem. I have no problem being told I'm wrong. Doesn't hurt my feelings at all. But if the intimacy is there, so many things in your life is going to go right. If you're
Oh,
just basing it on the sex,
mhm.
I don't, you know, I don't know if that's sustainable. I don't know. And I say that knowing that you have a better answer than I do.
You are 100% correct. I think that we get caught up in the idea that it needs to be a certain thing, sex,
Mhm.
like actual intercourse.
Yeah.
It does not have to be that way. It can be, it is the emotional connection between the two of you that does include physical affection. We all, I use this analogy a lot of times with, having a little kid. Now, my teenagers, and probably yours at this point, are not super excited about this theory, but little kids, you would never not hug your 3-year-old. You would never not like pick up your kiddo if on a daily basis. Like you just would not do that. So why would you do that to your spouse? Like why would you not give your spouse a hug, a kiss, hold hands, put some kind of body part on them while you are watching TV? Like physical contact is so important to our emotional well-being. Like we need it as a species. We are human and our humanness needs physical touch. It doesn't have to be sexual touch. It needs physical touch, and it needs it on a very regular basis, to the point where sometimes it might feel like you are overdoing it. You're never actually overdoing it, ever.
Really? Wow. See, I love that because you're exactly right. And I am not the best at all of this, but I will try. And it's always so things. Do you grab their hand? Do you touch them? Do you? And all of that matters. All of that will bring you. This is me talking from experience. It'll bring you more joy.
Mhm.
Leave the sex out of it. If you just feel bonded to your partner, that truly is what you're after. And I've said this before. Men tend to think if we have sex, we're now bonded. And again, if I'm wrong, let me know. And with women, is if you're emotionally available to me, we are now bonded.
Correct.
That
Correct.
can be achieved with what you're talking about is just the increase in intimacy. And don't use the word intimacy to replace sex.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And women in particular, they want to know that they are not just a sexual object to their partner. They actually like touching your wife or female partner on a regular basis that is not sexual in nature. So you're talking about like holding hands, right? Or just giving her a hug that and it doesn't lead to anything or you don't expect anything from her bedroom wise. Like you have got her 100%. You're going to reduce a majority of your conflicts. She will be a heck of a lot nicer to you. And then when she is like that, then it tends to lead to the extra fun part.
Now, on the female side,
That's on the female side.
yeah, and I'm just saying, but that's a man approaching the female side.
Yes.
Women approaching men, how should they approach a partner?
All right. So
Is it
now,
completely different rules? Completely different rules?
it's funny because I experiment on Sean. Um,
You can't do that as I'm taking a sip of
sorry,
coffee. You
sorry,
can't.
sorry.
You can't say things like that.
I was like, hey, just want to try out the psychological trick on you. Let's see if it works. Um, it totally works. Um, Men, first and foremost, men actually need a bit more of it's okay to be a little bit more aggressive with men. They don't tend to mind as
We're not.
much.
We're not subtle.
No.
And I think there's some people, but we're not subtle. Sometimes you need to hit us over the head and go, instead of going, hey, I think we can find a more flattering shirt. That's sweet of you to say. You know what really helps? I hate that shirt. Can we throw it away? That I understand.
Yes. So same thing with like physical touch. Like if you men also, just like women are like this too, but men generally like to hear that you are attracted to them. Men want to feel wanted and desired, like a lot, like a lot, a lot. I want to be wanted. I want her to want me. If you can, as a woman, make that abundantly clear to your male partner, like, he is going to be the happiest man on the planet.
That is so true. I mean, if my wife goes, "You look great today,"
Mhm.
I don't need anything else in my life. I really don't. I don't need anything else. And the flip side, and maybe this is, but the same thing, ladies, when we tell you you look great today, don't give us a, "Oh, thanks,"
Uh,
because we're trying to tell you, I always find you beautiful and I desire you. It doesn't mean I want to have sex right now or I expect to have sex right now.
Correct.
But, but give a little back,
Yes.
right? Is it? And we tend to dismiss it. We've always told the joke, I don't know if it's true in your house. I tell my wife, "You look great." "Oh, thanks." You guys come over and one of you goes, "You look great." She's like, "Really? You think so?" I mean, it's a big deal, right?
Yes.
And you're like, "So does my opinion not matter anymore?" And that's the way men think. I know she did not mean it that way. Hear me
Right.
when I say it, but that's the way the male brain works, at least the one I know.
Yes, I would say Sean is in the same category. He will say things like, "I tell you that all the time." Definitely in that voice, by the way. And
I'm going to have to do the podcast with Sean simply because people need to see it.
we have
Once
really
you've
painted
spent
a
15 or 20
glorious.
minutes, you will understand why she is so smitten with it. He is just a very funny and, like her, brilliant guy. Worked for NASA when he was like a teenager. He's crazy smart. And the problem is, so are their children. So you can imagine 6 of them in the same house.
It's really loud. You've had it. You've been around this. It's really loud.
Well,
And as an only child, sometimes I'm very overwhelmed by all of it. I'm like, what did I create?
wow. See, now that's the crazy thing because I have 4 sisters and a brother, right? But I was an oops baby, so I was almost like being an only child because my old sister's 20 years old,
Right.
right? And my brother was 4 years older than me, and he was the closest to me. So I get it, but I love the chaos. We love going to visit you guys simply because we love the chaos. That's one of the things we enjoy the most. It's just it's just the chaos because and you know this, and we told you before. If Heather and I if we could have met each other so many years ago, we'd have had 6 kids. We would have. There's no doubt in my mind we'd
There's
have had
no
6
doubt.
kids because I just love the chaos. I love everything about it. I love trying to get everybody everywhere. I love all of that stuff. And what I'm trying to do also when it comes to the intimacy, I am trying my best to show my sons, because I only have sons, that I love their mother.
Mm,
And I think it's really important for everybody, for your family. I think it's important for me as a husband to show my wife in front of our children, I love you. And I told my boys straight up, I would take a bullet for either one of you. Either one. But if you make me choose between you and her, I'm gonna pick her 100% of the time. Just so you know. And that's another way I try to let my wife know you and I are on the same side. And I'm trying to teach my children that's the way you need to approach it when you find your wife. If you're blessed enough to go that way too. And it's all part of the process, I would think. What's your thoughts on that?
you are just 100% so spot on. And when I talk to couples, we talk about modeling. We're modeling every single day what relationships look like. Now, you and Heather, you guys are very not chaotic. Sean and I, Sean and I, we will let you know if we do not like each other. You all know. There's no secrets whatsoever about that.
I
We
was
could be camping. We could be at home. We don't. It doesn't matter. Today is not our day. You all know why. And we so on the flip side of modeling like loving behavior, we also like to model like how not to talk to each other. Despite me being a therapist, it's really embarrassing sometimes. Like you would think I would learn like after years, like how to do this right. But you're 100% correct. We want to teach our children how to love their partner and boys in particular. Now we have the flip, right? So we have one son who bless we refer to him as baby Jesus, as you know, because
he's the best. We've tried to adopt him many times because my boys love him so much.
Yeah, he's been willing to be adopted given that his 3 sisters. But you're modeling for the boys how to be a man, how to be a husband. And that is so important because what you're teaching them is how to treat a woman. And in this day and age, I think that is a lost art. I think it's something that like, a lot of us are trying to do better, but it's hard. It is hard. I think on the flip side, for in our house, Sean's challenge is to show his girls like this is how a man should treat you.
Mm-hmm.
So that they go out and they pick somebody like Luke.
In his wildest dreams.
There might be an inside joke between Gary and I.
In his wildest dreams, if you guys ever get a chance to see Stephanie's daughters, in his wildest dreams.
Oh, Luke. Buddy. But we would be, in all seriousness, because you do such a good job of modeling how to treat your wife. Like, those boys, there is no, like, if that is who one of my girls chooses, oh my Lord, it would just be the best. It really would. And modeling behavior is so important for our kids, which includes modeling physical intimacy in front of your kids.
That's where I was trying to get to. And how does that, because it is so easy to get embarrassed. And especially with teenagers when you think they're being embarrassed all the time. And the truth of it is, and this is what I've learned, a buddy of mine wrote a book and it was talking about the teenagers and stuff. And he had the statistic in his book that just blew me away. That they asked teenagers, this book was written 5 years ago, I think 5 years. And they asked teenagers, who in your life if you could spend more time with them daily, who would it be? Number one answer was parents. Number two, and parents was like almost 60 something percent. Number two in 40%. So a 20% difference was their friends, right? So they're all about you. And it's like you were talking about having that pick you up and to hold your kiss and your 3-year-old. They get very weird about that. But when it's just you, my 6 foot tall 14-year-old comes up to me every night and hugs me and offers me his cheek because he wants me to kiss him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Theo is the exact same way. Theo is
when you see this big honking kid and at night, all he wants is dad to kiss him goodnight. That's all he wants. So we have to remember that when it comes to this physicality and our embarrassment and their embarrassment. Sorry, I derailed you, but go from there.
So and you, again, you know that Sean and I will wear our hearts on our sleeve, and that includes affection. Sean and I are very affectionate in front of you. You guys, we don't make out in front of you. That would be super weird. But
that's one of the things we love about you is that you talk about, you know where we stand all the time, but you never doubt you love each other. And it's like, are you irritated? Sure. Name me a human I don't get irritated with. But the passion you guys have with your love is what all of us who love you and enjoy your company, I think that's what we love the most about you guys.
We do try to make it easy. And this is, again, a model that I think that just comes naturally to Sean and I is affection is a big deal. in our household, in our relationship for sure. There, even last night, I guess, like, he said something that like kind of freaked me out, and I was like, "Yeah, I need you to hug me." And Emerson was like, "You, what in the world?" And I was like, "You leave me alone, teenager. I understand." But that, like, I'm lucky if I get to like pat her on the arm and she just doesn't bite my hand off right now. But it is being physically affectionate, hugging, kissing, even little love pats here and there. Like, yes, your kids are going to be like, "Oh, it's cringe." Like, keep doing it. And they want it too. Like, even though I was joking about Emerson, like, she's 16 and she is definitely, I am not her most favorite human right now. She still wants a good night, I love you, like, hug,
Uh-huh.
side hug.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when we get worried about being affectionate with our partner, most people are like, "Oh, like, we're gonna make out in front of our kids." Like, no, like a hug, quick kiss, especially hello and goodbye. That's a huge one. If
Mhm.
you can, like, hello and goodbye with physical affection, like, do it. That would be, I would say, start there because it's the easiest one to do. And, not to be morbid, but if they walk out the door and you didn't hug them goodbye that day,
Mhm.
like, that would really
100%.
suck.
If you're looking for Western wear, you need to find Winchester Western Wear at 1185 South Bascom Avenue in San Jose. You're not going to find the perfect outfit at the mall or the outlets. Come to the place with over 40 years of experience and all the top name brands like Ariat, Justin, Stetson, Tony Lama, and more. When you go to the great country shows at Shoreline, SAP, Club Rodeo, or Clola Shans, you'll be looking your best, from boots to hats to everything in between, with a knowledgeable staff that'll make the entire experience a fun one. Find them online at winchesterww.com. That's winchesterww.com. Or put this in your maps: 1185 South Bascom Avenue in San Jose. Winchester Western Wear. They'll help you find a look you love. Let's talk about the inevitable. End of life. Once I leave this earth, I can't do anything for my loved ones, but I've just learned by pre-planning a funeral or cemetery in advance takes the guesswork out when death occurs suddenly and your mind is clouded with grief. Dignity Memorial can help. My friend Tina Skurla pre-plans funeral and cemetery arrangements so loved ones don't have to. They're North America's largest provider of funeral, cremation, and cemetery services. They're dedicated to getting every detail right, and they do that by listening to you. I know it's a hard subject, but I also know we all see the sense and value of what Dignity Memorial does. Use the promo code Gary to get 25% off at Willow Glen Funeral Home. Reach out to my friend Tina Skurla today. She's committed to helping families not go through the tragedy of loss alone. Click on the link, use the promo code Gary, or email her at dmppa.tinaskurla.com, or call 408-398-7050.
And having them understand that I'm having that conversation about their grandparents. And I know you guys have the same thing. That I saw my son's, because he has a phone, but he knows it's our phone. And I pick up his phone and go through his phone all the time. And he knows it. And I said, "You make sure your friends know that." And he goes, "Oh yeah, they all know. If you text me, my dad's going to read it." But I sit back and let him know his grandparents sent him text. He wouldn't respond. And I'm like, "Hey man, dude, they're past the age where we get to guarantee they're here tomorrow." I like to think, okay, you're 14. I like to think that the good Lord has given me the guarantee that you'll be there, whether you are or not. He's given me that. But I'm telling you from my experience, they're at that age now where we can't guarantee. So the least you can do, because trust me, one day you'll wish you did instead of you wishing you did. And he goes, "Well, I don't know what to say." And I'm like, "That's the beautiful world you live in. All you've got to do is give them a thumbs up or a heart, or send them a little GIF, where somebody's getting, there's so many options for you, And he's like, "Oh, okay. All right." But again, it's teaching them these things. It's having
Yeah.
these conversations and not being embarrassed to have these conversations. And that's what I constantly tell my wife. Don't be embarrassed. because my wife is very genteel. My wife is, and that's not a criticism. I love it about her. But I always tell her, don't be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed to say things to them. Don't be embarrassed to ask them a question. Don't be embarrassed to say, I need you to do this, you know. And the other day he left, she drove him to school and she came home, she was a little upset. I'm not betraying anything. She goes, I roll the window down to say bye. And he goes, go, go. And I'm like, okay. I said, but he learns that from me because I don't like being in the way. Right. And I said, you need to be able to pull him aside and go, hey, don't do that. That hurts my feelings. And don't be embarrassed about saying it.
Oh,
And
keep it up. And Miss Flood will come down and be like, hey, look, how's it going? You miss me.
and that's what I'm saying is that we start building these walls, and that's where it starts from that first question when I talked to you to start this off at, is that when we start building these walls, and I would be willing to bet from you're doing this for a long time. It takes a long time for us to ever realize that we're the ones building the walls. We think they are. And oh, by the way, they are. But we're building our wall as rapidly as they are, I would think, and not ever realizing it, because we're the hero of all of our stories.
Yeah. I would say that we learn so much from our parents and our parents' relationship and the way our parents, and I give people like in the course a good long lecture. It's not a lecture. I'm really trying to teach you things about how to ask questions. Actually, questions that your parents probably never once like had a conversation with you about. And how do you actually, in answering these questions, you learn a lot about like, oh, well, I never actually saw my mom and dad hug or kiss. I never heard my parents say I love you to anybody ever. I never, I didn't even know my dad liked my mom. Like, so when you start to look back on like our families, like we kind of look at like, oh, well, that was our model. So how do we want to change our model now for our kids? Like, so that they have actually stronger, better, deeper, loving relationships that are less filled with conflict, that keep them out of. If I could not be in business anymore as a couples therapist, that'd be pretty darn awesome. It really would.
You never
But
will be. It's a human condition. You never will be.
I know.
I know.
It's all right though. I love it. I'll love it till I die. I think that, yeah, as we're modeling behavior, we are also retrospectively looking back on like, oh man, I learned that from my mom. Like, worked so hard not to be like her. Turns out there are some things there. And then, do we want to pass that along to our kids? So I think, if you go through a flood of love, you will get 1,000 questions to start to ask your partner, to ask yourself. And it really will start to change the conversation. And it changes the way you start interacting with yourself, with your partner, and with your family members, kids or parents.
And that's what I'm saying. Here's a chance for, because honestly, the majority of us don't even know what questions to ask ourselves, much less our partners. And if you can come up with those, as you say, thousands, if you can come up with the first 10 questions to ask yourself and honestly ask yourself, and then honestly answer it, because man, we're good at lying to us more than we are to anybody else.
Oh,
I tell more lies to me than I ever do to. I try not to lie to anybody, but I'll lie to me in a heartbeat.
yeah.
In a heartbeat,
Yeah.
because I'm convinced I'm the stupidest person out there. So I'll be able to tell me a lie because I'll never figure it out. But if you can figure out those questions, if you can, that's got to, because with the course, that allows you to have the freedom to be able to do it just on your own,
Yes.
and which is awesome, because people get to go on that, because it is tough. It is tough when people sit down with you. One of the reasons hard thing about therapy, and this is just me projecting here, is that you are taking on their problems. and you are dealing with the emotions that is right there in front of you and right there in front of them, and really making them take, you're holding the mirror up and going, this is what you see. What do you see right now? But it's everything's in the hour long or however long the session is. This is you and you alone taking the time to really parse it out at the pace you like. And I think it's starting. And again, I could be wrong, but shouldn't you start, especially with the flood of love? Start with you first. Watch the whole thing. Go through the whole thing. Do you, and don't expect them to watch it, but see how it changes you.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You can absolutely do it on your own. And yes, when you come into couples therapy, most of the time people want me to side with them together as a couple. Um, and a lot of times, yes. And I cannot tell you how many times I have heard, oh, that's a really good question. Because I will ask something that they have never thought of before. And it's usually about how they're going to do something maybe a little bit differently or see it a little bit differently. And the design of the course was to put that in a format that, yes, you could just sit in your office and you can just sit there for 10 minutes and go through some of these questions and have a moment with yourself and be like, I have actually never said that to my spouse. I've never said that out loud to anybody. I don't even know how I would say it now that I have the answer. My job and my goal through the course is to teach you how to talk about it.
Wow.
And you will hopefully get that. And I know for a fact that it works because I've done it to you and Heather.
I know it, and it's so easy because you and I have talked about how easy it is for life to overtake you, and you take care of everybody's needs except yours and the person you love most in this world, right? Because we're so busy about going, oh, well, we got to get them to this practice, we got to go there, we got this little thing, and we got to over this, and by the way, we need to work, and blah 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 blah, and taking that time to go, this is our time, and I know there's questions I should be asking my wife that I don't. Not only because, and you and I have talked about this, you're afraid of what she'll think of you or he will think of you if you ask this question, instead of being more interested in their answer, right? The whole judgment zone. It takes a while to push people out of that, I would think, when you start therapy with someone. It seems like that would be like one of the first things you got. And again, I don't know. I don't know. Is it?
Yeah, it's definitely in therapy. You It is human nature to want to present your best self, even when, again, the house is on fire. Like,
Uh-huh.
and mm, there are very few people that actually will come into therapy and just be like, here's all the crappy things I've done. Usually like to sugarcoat it a little bit before, like, and mostly because I think they're afraid that I'm going to judge them on something. I, I you know, we are human and we are flawed, and it makes us awesome because we are. And yeah, we do dumb stuff and hurt people, hurt our spouse, hurt ourselves all the time. But you know what? We get grace, and you will 100% always get grace from me. Like,
Mhm.
me and Sean, we are the most flawed humans ever. We are a mess. It is messy and hard, and we will own up to that every single day of the week. And my job and my goal is always to project that if you are in my world and you know me, that there was never ever any judgment. And if you're trying, like, that is the most awesome, beautiful thing you could do. Just try. Just try and do a little better.
And as we said, most of the time, the only person judging you is you. I mean,
Right.
you're the one, you're trying to live up to these ideals that you put up in your head. You know, hasn't that always happened? I had somebody I used to work with forever, and I would never hear from them or something like that. It was not like we had a a close relationship. And then I was having there talking to them a number of years ago, and they were like, I I never thought you liked me. I thought you just thought I was, and I'm like, did you ever ask me? I said, I never had a chance to talk to you because you never go in the same room with me. And why? And he goes, well, I was just kind of intimidated. And I'm like, from what? And he goes, because you know, whatever, you do this and you're that and you're that. And I'm like, but you never gave me the chance. If you didn't give me the chance to like, I tried to give you the chance a number of times, and I thought you didn't like me because you wouldn't go to room with me. Right? And I said, do you understand how that looks from my side, right? And he's like, I totally get it. I understand it now. He goes, but I was young and stupid and intimidated. And I'm like, but the only person who was intimidating was you. You were the only person intimidating you. I, I never had the chance to intimidate you. And it's like, all right. And that's one of the things I tell my sons all the time as we go through this parenting is that you're the one who's setting up these imaginary things because the truth of it is only you hear the thoughts in your head. Only you do.
Unless you're Sean, and then you just verbally.
You know, my wife got me to, because I used to get angry when I was driving, and I'd like, like that. And she goes, why are you yelling? And I'm like, because of him. She goes, but you're basically yelling at me. They can't hear you. So you're just yelling at me. And I'm like, oh,
Fine.
I'm sorry. I just tell somebody to like sit back and go. I do have to ask you this, right? Because
Yes.
I know we're getting close to our time being up, and I asked you for an hour and you graciously gave it to me. But as you and I record this, I don't know if you saw this, but Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters just recently announced that he had a child out of wedlock. Now, this is a man in his 50s going on 60. He has grown daughters. He's got a wife that he's been with forever. I'm not asking you to psychoanalyze him. I'm not. I'm asking you to look at that situation. Leave Dave Grohl out of this, but factor in that this is a very famous person. I don't care what it is. I'm just using him as an example. When you saw that as a professional, what did you think?
You know, there's been a few famous gentlemen that have had this happen to them.
But the fact that he's trying to stay with his wife and family.
Yeah.
Right?
So
I thought that was interesting because he goes, listen, I'm going to try to earn my wife and daughter's respect and love back. And please leave my children out of anything you want to say about me. And I'm like, that's a good stand up. I mean, I can respect that. I can totally respect that. But everything else, I'm like, oh boy, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. And bless his wife for having the stamina to walk through the process, because it's going to be a process. There's going to be a lot of feels, and if you ever really want to boil down your relationship, have infidelity be part of it, because it will rock your whole core. And so I think anybody that has gone through that experience, that has, you know, had that happen, you really, you really need to start to figure out the why, and then the who do I want to be differently going forward, because that's the only way to rebuild trust and repair is to be very clear and very transparent about who you were at the time that the infidelity was potentially happening. And there's a myriad of reasons why it happens. And then who do you want to be? Because it will be a new relationship for them. It will be a totally new relationship, because he's going to have to be honest and transparent and different, fundamentally different than he has been up until that point. So it's a new marriage and a new shift. Esther Perel really talks actually about that a lot. That it's a shift. It is, you are starting anew, and spouses that can work through it, like they tend to be a lot stronger. They really do. It sometimes it's a renewal of their marriage, and actually a really good thing, because it just so much shifts everything. For him, and again, anybody that has participated in an affair, there is hurt there. And sometimes I don't know if anybody actually really looks at what the hurt is that's trying to be escaped from when it comes to that kind of stuff. Um, and the comments on that one, I'm sure, will be a lot like how, all the things people have very strong feelings
Well,
about
and
infidelity.
yeah, and that's
They tend to treat it like the plague.
yeah. And you're
I
right.
don't,
It's been happening forever. And the
yeah,
difference is, I mean, we're all fascinated when it happens to the rich and famous
hmm
because it's one thing if you're a struggling couple just barely making it financially, right? It may be very hard to go your separate ways.
yes,
In that case, she could walk out with all the money she'll ever need in her life. So for her to go, no, I've got this life. I've got these children. We've built this life and we're going to fix it. She's the hero in this. Her and the children are the heroes.
yeah,
And he rightly casted himself as if anyone's the villain, it's him. From what I can understand, the mother of the other child was very young. She may have known what she was doing. The difference is he's old enough to know better.
yes,
And if you're old enough to know better, I don't involve anybody else in your bad decisions.
right,
That's on you. And I think we're all fascinated by that. I'm pulling for it. I love love. I love people being in love. It makes me thrilled to be around people who are in love. It's one of the reasons I enjoy being around you. I enjoy being around our friends. We know so many people who are just, and when you see somebody like that, especially in this day and age when everything's so accessible,
right,
right?
yes,
It's
yes.
you don't see a lot of affairs anymore because there's cameras everywhere. So for them to did this happen and go through it, I appreciate you giving me your take on it because it was just fascinating. It's just one of those things that professionally, that's one of those questions I would have asked you if we were in the backyard
Yeah.
having a
No,
glass
and
of wine.
really interestingly enough, we actually had not actually somebody that you and Heather know, a friend of Sean and I's. They had a similar situation where, and then they have all the money in the world. They have all the money in the world.
Yeah,
She chose to stay because she believed in love and she believed in her marriage and she believed in forgiveness. And you got to be, in marriage, you need to be able to forgive because we're going to hurt each other, even if it's not infidelity. If we're going to hurt each other, we know how to hurt each other like nobody's business because we know them better than anybody else. And she chose to stay for those reasons, and they have been going strong. And she is truly one of the most strong women I know because she chose to work through this with him. Um,
that's beautiful. I love that. And that's one of the things that, my wife and she has told me that. She goes, there's nothing we can't work through. Right. And that gives you that stability. That gives you that freedom to go like, well, because with her and I, it's like, well, there's never going to be another person involved. There's not. So you never have to worry about that occasion. Now, you want to think, oh, I'm just a jerk or an asshat or I'm not paying attention. That's valid. That's valid, and go through that and all that stuff. But yeah, it's a flood of love. The links are here on the podcast. It's you having a chance to, as again, ask yourself those questions. See what this thing does for you. And when they notice the change in you, and they will, then you go, well, I did this. You wanna take a look at it. And tell them they can do it on their own time. Do it like I did. Do it on your own time. And if it really matters to you, then we'll do it together. And as you said, you come out as I love that the way the way you ended up talking about Dave Grohl and not Dave Grohl, but just that relationship is you come out with a brand new relationship that has a history, but it's brand new.
yeah.
I think that's beautiful. I
Yay.
like that. I like that a lot. I told you I told you that you and I told we never have a problem talking. Anything we have a problem. I've got this clock because I sit back and said, I know she got about 1 million things to do today. And I promise I'm only going to keep you an hour. So I've been surreptitiously going, okay, because Gary, if you get going, all of a sudden you're going to look up in 3.5 hours. I'm going to have done a Joe Rogan. And it's going to be 3.5 hours and everything's wrecked. And your kids are going to be coming into the picture going, I'm starving. I got to get to soccer. I know.
Joe, no. Yeah, we're about 5 minutes away from that actually happening.
Right. Again, thank you. We'll do this again because I've got more questions I want to ask and go down that because relationships today face different challenges than my parents faced.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to talk about the internet. So we'll talk about that the next time we do this. But check it out, A Flood of Love. Now you see why my family loves her and her family. You get it now, right? Kind of simple.
Thank you so much.